Hello, I think we may be live. We're confirming whether we're live.
Let's see. Yeah, it's just taking a moment. There we go.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Greg Wise, one of the instructional team for COM 100, Introduction to Human Communication. Welcome to our first live session. So I'm live on video, as it were. And this is an opportunity to talk a little bit about the course, your questions you might have, and there we go. So again, welcome. We've had a great welcome to the class. We've had everyone introducing themselves, and it's really the opportunity to meet you all and to read all your introductions. It's a fascinating group. It's this wonderful group from all over the world, coming from a variety of backgrounds and engaging this discussion. And I love seeing the fact that you all are chatting with each other and recognizing similar experiences and sort of helping each other out in this, because we're all in this together to explore communication, something that we all do, and I think we all find fascinating, even though we take it for granted so much. So thank you for all your welcome posts and the first explorations of our strengths and weaknesses of communication, and thinking about what we're good at. We always have things that we need to work on. A lot of people are worried about speech anxiety, public speaking, or even staring at a camera could make someone nervous, and then how do we deal with that? And so we'll be talking about that. It could be questions of listening, that'll come up a little bit in this current unit, as aspects of communication to work on. So the first thing I wanted to do in this live session, is to do a little bit of housekeeping, some things that have come up. One thing is we've been having a few little glitches with the system, and wanted to let you know that we're looking into that. If anything happens, like the modules don't seem to be there, or you're having issues, technical issues, let us know, post something to the discussion board, but then also email earnedadmission@asu.edu for the technical support, and they'll get on that. Sorry if you're having some technical issues. These things come up, but we'll try to address those as fast as we can and let you know about that. Another thing in terms of communicating with us, we do most of our communication through the discussion boards. And so if you wanted to post a question to us, you can post it to the boards. Be careful of, well, not necessarily careful, but be aware of where you're posting it to. Some things get dropped into the wrong category or to different categories. So we're getting introductions within general questions, or there might be a general question for, say, the live chat that's showing up in something for one of the modules. So it's just that if things don't end up in the right discussion, it might take us longer to get to it. And especially if something is, an urgent question is posted to an older forum, we might not see it right away. So please be sure where you're posting. There's a general one for general questions about the course. There's a general questions then for each of the modules. So if it's something in module 1, you post it in module 1, module 2, module 3, as a way of sort of flagging, so we can then address it more quickly. So just be aware of that, and we'll do our best to get back with you on your questions as we go. So want to check on that. Some other questions have been coming up as themes within the discussion, more sort of housekeeping issues. One, in terms of assignments, for like the situation analysis and the reaction response, we're looking for 300 to 350 words. These are ballparks. This is a sense of how long they should be, how detailed these should be. A lot of questions, can it go over a bit? Am I penalized if it's a little bit long? No, you're not. It's not an absolute number. You're cut off at 350. It's a ballpark. So if you're going over a little bit, don't worry, it shouldn't affect your grade. That shouldn't. If it's going a lot over, might be something to think about editing. think about how well focused is this? Do I need all the support that's in there? Do I need do I need details? Am I going off topic? And if you do that editing and it's still longer, but it's a really good and solid thing, that's fine. Just keep in mind the ballpark. But I know people are worried about if I go longer, what will happen. So a bit over is fine. If you've got questions on assignments, especially if the prompt isn't clear, let us know. Let us know well ahead of time before it is due, so we have a chance to respond and you have a chance to see that response. So again, any questions you might have, just let us know. So assignments and length. A second thing, there have been a lot of questions about citations. How do we cite sources? What are we looking for cite sources? How do we cite the course materials? Because the course materials are embedded in the course, so it's not an independent book and it's a video. And so how do we do this? So I've posted a couple things to the general forum responding to how to cite a video and how to cite the course text. These are suggestions on that. A key thing with citation is that anytime you use ideas of words from other people, could be another person in class, it could be a professor, it could be something you've read. Anytime you're using someone else's words, you need to indicate the source. In our reaction, response, and situation analysis, we're asking you, and we expect you to engage and make use of the concepts from class. When you do so, then make reference to the readings or lectures where this came from. So you might say, well, as Professor Corey said in his lecture, or as the reading on communication competence said. So where these things are coming from, so we see you engaging with that, that content in that way. And then if you want to list references for that, what specific videos, what specific readings you would have could be listed at the end. Again, a general format. We can have a link up there for the ASU Library Guide to Citation. There's APA, there's MLA, there's all these different ways. But the key thing is just some basic information that we would need for citations. What we want you to focus on is your engagement with the ideas, and then make sure to make your basic attribution to of where these things are coming from. And I know also since you're cutting and pasting things into a text box, not all formatting will follow. So don't worry about if there's some technical details that aren't working. If you can't do a hanging indent, that's okay, because it's the nature of the medium that we have. We're just looking at, if it's someone else's ideas or it's a quote from something, where's that coming from? Let us know so we can find it. So let me know if you have questions on that. So just trying to, I know a lot of people have been asking about that. Next thing, a question on quizzes. And this is just sort of a process question that when you're done with the quiz, when it's been graded, make sure to go back through, look at the answers, look at the ones you might have gotten wrong. Use that opportunity to go back into the materials for the unit, look at the readings and the lectures, and find where that, what the right answer might be. And it's best to do this when it's fresh. Don't wait for another 5 weeks when you're close to the final and have to go back in and what was the right answer. If you do that now and add that to your notes, that will help refreshing you for the final. For the final, it's always good to then go back and review the quizzes, review your notes, and if there are some of the lectures or readings that aren't sticking with you or weren't as clear, go back through them. And as always, if there's questions, let us know. Right? If you look back at the quiz and you're like, okay, I thought, could you explain this a little bit more? Happy to do so. But always sort of make sure to go back and do that. And a reminder also that while the quizzes themselves aren't proctored, the final exam will be. And you've all done a test proctoring and things like that, so that should be fine. And again, if you're unclear on any of the assignments, post something in the discussion board, let us know. Okay. So I've been talking fast, so hope you all are doing well.
There is one question here.
Okay, we have a question that just came in.
From David. Going back to formatting and uploading work, do we need to fix the fact that it takes away from double spacing? Also, when do we get to see the answers to the questions we got wrong on the quizzes? The quiz questions, once they've taken the quiz, it should once the deadline passes, they should be able to see
Okay.
if they've gotten it wrong.
So for the quiz questions, once the deadline passes, so the deadline passed last night for quiz 1 and quiz 2, you should be able to go back in and see, you'll see the correct, if you got it correct, it'll be checked, marked right, but you should be able to see the correct answers as well if you got something wrong. So you can go back and look at that. In terms of, do you have to compensate for double spacing? If you type something up in Word and double spaced it and you post it in there, it goes away. You don't have to. It's legible from our end, so I wouldn't worry about that sort of format in typing up these responses. So I wouldn't worry about that.
See
if there's another question right now.
Nope, we're good.
Okay. All right, we've just completed modules 1 and 2. Just started module 3 today. So we've covered models and process of communication, communication and competency. These are core ideas that we will carry with us throughout the semester. You'll notice us referring back to them, especially competency will be something each unit will talk about. How does this affect our communication competency? How can we work on our communication competency for nonverbal or for intercultural or mass media or something like this as we go through the semester. But also the models of communication will be ones we'll refer back to, because each of those models that we covered is a different way of thinking about communication. So we had the transmission, the interaction, and the transactional model. And they'll sort of come back as we think about what is happening with communication. And I know there was a question about sort of expanding a little bit on these models, so I'll just say a couple words about it. The transmission model is sort of this. It's an old model, but it's a very simple and linear model of communication. It sees communication as sort of the message as this package that we're sending. So the transmission is sort of me. I encode a message with my thoughts. I encode it into language and send it to you, and then you receive it and decode it. And that sort of sees language as a certain, it's a one-directional, it's about influence, it has a certain, I don't know, there's a certain, there's an ideology behind it, a certain idea that communication is about sort of influencing others, and it almost, it has its limitations, but it's also very clear. I mean, it's a model of communication that engineers working on early telephone were looking at this as a way of understanding this and what noise comes in. But as we know, the transmission, we could think about the problem of communication. If I'm encoding and I need to send something to someone, how's that going to get there? Are you going to be able to decode it? That's an important process to understand. So that's that model, and it works in certain circumstances to focus on that model. The interaction model recognizes that it's not just a one-way. We just had some questions come in. So even in this context, there is interaction, even though I'm not seeing you, I'm not hearing you coming back, but there is sort of a slower feedback loop. We are getting other messages back to me. So there is an interaction, and then interpersonal, we are interacting. I send something to you, you react and say something to me, and we get this sort of feedback, and it's sort of we see the communication as going back and forth as we go through. And there's situations where we want to look at that back and forth of communication. The third one, in some ways, is a little bit trickier, thinking about transactional, because we want to set aside that ping pong match of where's the message going? I send a message to you, you send one back to me, I send one to you. And the strange thing is about this setup, you can't see this, but I'm looking at myself in the screen. I've got the camera in myself. So I'm having a conversation with myself. So I'm ping-ponging this back, which is very strange. But the transactional model isn't about that ping-ponging of meaning back and forth. It is about people who are communicators, you, myself, other people, that as we communicate, we are creating a shared set of meanings. We're creating a shared world. we are coming up with a common understanding through communication. We are reinforcing what we have in common. We are integrating new ideas and news into our conceptions of the world. So it's seeing communication as what scholar James Carey calls sort of a ritual model of communication. We see communication as reaffirming a view of the world or creating a view of the world. So it's not saying, well, what's the noise and where's the signal, what's the message? It's more of how are we creating a common culture? Where conflicts come up in that culture? So again, a different way of thinking about communication than the other two. They're all very useful for different situations. So hopefully that helps sort of clarify a little bit, and we'll come back to this. As we go on, you might hear us refer to, well, that goes back to a transmission model of communication, but if we think about it in terms of transactional, we ask different questions. So mass communication, we could think about it as a transmission and question of influence. How does mass media influence us? Or we could think of mass media as a transactional. How does it help create common understandings and common meanings, what we take for granted for our, as what the way the world is, or what common meanings are, or what's normal even. And that's a question that will come up. So hopefully that helps. And we talked some about communication channels as well. And that's always tricky differentiating between the channel and the content. So the channel is sort of that means, it's sensory means. So right now it's a video chat is the channel, but the content, the meaning of that is what's actually on the stream. Clarifying some of this, there was a question about that as well. So we've covered that. So hopefully that is clear, and that will be important as we go on. And we've also discussed how communication is essential for identity, and the different ways communication is involved in identity, how we communicate our identities, how our bodies communicate to others, how others read who we are. And there is an absolutely amazing set of posts and supportive conversations going on the discussion boards about how people experience identity and how their identity has changed, and the ways they've changed and not changed, and the relation between sort of ascribed identities and avowed identities, who we are versus who others say we are, and say we should be, and how do we negotiate that? And that's questions of sexuality and religion and ethnicity and gender and all these things, and the performativity of these. So we hope this has been a meaningful unit as we think about that aspect of communication and our identity. And the thing is with all these things, communication is something that we all do. We all communicate. It is part of our everyday life. And that's what fascinates me about communication, because we don't have to look at rarefied circumstances. We can look at the everyday. And so for this class, when we talk about these ideas, on the one hand, you're learning concepts and abstractions, but these should be things that we can talk about and think about and look around. And how does this affect me? So we're asking you to learn these things, but also to apply them. To think about, well, what does this say about my family or my relationship with my boss or customers or others, or, oh, I do that, right? So hopefully we can relate, or some things we can't relate. It's like, no, that's not me. I'm not that way. But it's something that we can think of personally. So it's a fascinating area, and I appreciate the great supportive discussions people are having. Like, wow, I had that experience too, and people have been very supportive. So I think that's fabulous.
There was a question. I've answered it.
Okay.
About the turnaround time for grades, and I've said that it's within a week, and that they were asking about if they'll see the mistakes or the errors, and I said that the graders put the comments in there. And as far as there's another student, Jeff, I see your question here about your overall grade, and I think that does have to do with, I don't want to talk about individual students' grades during the live session. We want to really focus on the content. But I think that given the fact that your assignments haven't been graded yet, your overall grade will certainly, or your current grade will certainly be a little bit lower than it should be, because those missing assignments are registering as zeros.
Right. Right. Anything that hasn't been graded is going to show up as a 0 for right now.
So,
doesn't mean you got a 0 on it. Just we're getting to that. We do try to get things graded within a week.
So yeah, I mean, to give you guys a sense of things, there is about 530 students on the credit eligible track. And so, and the first 2 assignments were due on the same day, which that poses a little bit of a challenge. So we ask for your patience in these initial moments. But if you do have questions or concerns about what you're seeing on your progress page, you can contact Earned Admission, and you can, if you're comfortable, raising it on the public forum, if it's a general global issue, by all means, you can go ahead and do that. But in any case, I just wanted to address those 2 that had come up and just let you know what was coming through.
And if there is a particular question you don't want to put on a public forum, especially something about particular grades, and I understand you wouldn't want to put that in a forum, send something to Earned Admission, let them know the urgency, you really want to find out about this, and they will get that onto us so we can get back with you on that. So things that you are comfortable putting on the public, then put it on the public discussion board. Otherwise, send something to Earned Admission, and they'll get it to us. But yes, all of Module 1 assignments and Module 2 assignments, people have been turning those in, but they were all due last night. So we are working on those as far as we can. We'll get those done as soon as possible. And then once they're graded, you'll see responses to that. You'll see the scores on the different aspects of the rubric. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions people have?
I'm typing, speak.
Okay. Coming up next, if people are still thinking about questions, we have verbal communication, which is one open today, Module 3, which is, they're all fun units. I was going to say it's a fun unit, but they're all fun units. They should be interesting, engaging units. To think about how language makes meaning, and how, the importance of words and language, but also how it changes, how particular languages might have particular words that others don't. How does that shape our worldview? Do you have a word in a language that another language doesn't have, that doesn't quite translate? Does that capture certain cultural experience that one culture might pay more attention to than another? So think about the words that we use and when we use that, and how slang comes up, or how language changes, or how we switch between languages, how we code switch between one language and another. And that could be between full languages, between English and Spanish and German and Tagalog or something like this, or even within jargon or slang, where you're going to talk in one way with your family, another way with your boss, another way with friends, all within the same language, but really you're speaking different languages. So how do we negotiate that? So to think about sort of language and how meanings change. We'll talk about the field of semiotics, which is the science of signs, how things make meaning. We assume the world is meaningful. We read words. We say we understand what that means. But where does that meaning come from? How did it get there? Is it in that sign? Is it in that collection of letters? And is that the only thing it means? So we'll talk about the idea of polysemy, something with many meanings, that one word might have a denotation. Say dog will be the example that comes up. It means sort of indicates a particular animal, symbolizes that. But the connotation of dog might switch culturally. What is a dog like? What are the qualities of a dog? And how something might have more meanings than one that we could read into it. So it's I think, very interesting section coming up, and also talking about listening styles and listening skills. And you'll ask yourself, what type of listening style do I have? And how can I apply that? And then next week, Module 4 is nonverbal communication. So that's where we'll be going after this. So let's see. Any other questions?
Yes,
We
there
have
are a
another question.
few. So
Okay.
bear with me. So David and Mary, bear with me one moment. I'm going to look for that quiz question and put it toward Dr. Wise.
Mhm.
In the meantime, there's a question from Jeff. He says, "I really find code switching fascinating. Do you have any book recommendations that focus on code switching?"
I don't have one offhand, but I will make a note. Or particular books or references. And I'll post something in the discussion if I find something that I would recommend. That's a good question. I think digging deeper into some of these things, it's communication is a fascinating. I mean, I made my career out of studying different aspects of communication, but you can really dig into some of these things. But that's a good question.
So the quiz question that is coming up, I'm trying to figure out which one everyone is talking about. So I'm going to ask the group for some clarification.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. Quiz number 2, there was a question about gender and the answer was babies. But I know where I looked, it said babies, and I Googled the answer, kept finding under age 5, so I chose 3.
Mhm.
Okay, and then this, the same for me, I've seen 2 or 3 years of age, and it was wrong. Is it the question people usually first learn about gender and culturally? Let me see what this other one is. It's gotta be. So let me put this in here and see if this is the question. This is the only one that I can come up with.
We're looking into the question.
Is this the question, David and Mary? Is that the question that you're looking for?
So it's just been posted to the chat. Is that the question you're concerned about?
Because otherwise, so I'm only seeing. Let me look in another. Okay, let's see. The question is, when is gender learned? Okay.
Okay.
Yes, so people first learn about gender and culturally appropriate gender behaviors. And the answer choices are as babies, in adolescence, when they enter school, and around 3 years of age. And the right answer, according to what we have, is as babies.
Mhm.
And these 2 students put 3 years of age.
Mhm.
We can check with, this course was developed with a team of 5 people. We can always
Right.
check into it, but do you have?
Yeah, I'd want to check in. Most likely, thinking about babies, I think about the toys examples of how gender is, in some ways, gets baked into the particular toy choices that we even give to children younger than 3. Given, do you play with a toy truck, or do you give a doll, for example? And those become gender choices. So you learn about which toys which toys you gravitate towards, but then also maybe those sort of basic choices that would be before age 3 start making an impression in terms of gender. But we'll look into it, and we can talk to some of the other team members on this as well to clarify on that.
Yeah, so we'll let you know what happens with that, and if there is an issue, and if there's something in error, we'll let everybody know, and if there's not an error, we'll let you know the rationale as well. So don't worry that all is not lost.
All is not lost. We will look into it. We got questions like this, and like, wait, this doesn't make sense. and you look back at the readings and it's, if you're not finding it, there's the answer. Let us know. I'll look into it.
Okay. Are there other questions
Anything else?
before we wrap up? Anything?
Going once?
Going twice?
Going twice? If you do,
Yep.
I'm in the discussion forums. Post something. We'll get back with you about that. We have another live session coming up in a few weeks, so we can do this again. And wait,
There's one more.
Someone's typing. Okay.
Okay, David asks another quiz question. The race question can be 3 out of 4 choices. Difficult. Hang on, David. I need to see if I can find that question.
Okay, we're looking into that other question.
Okay, so race is, and then the question is skin color, biological fact, universally defined through science, or difficult, if not impossible to define.
Mm-hmm.
And difficult, if not impossible to define was the answer that was correct.
Mm-hmm.
However, David, we can again check into it.
Mm-hmm.
These things might not only be found in the readings, but also in the lectures, but we'll put that one down as well as one to check into and follow up on.
I believe that's in Professor Corey's lecture on race. I think I remember him saying no, no, and no. And I think that was sort of as different. I think that's on race, but we will look and see. So making it's something difficult to define as the answer, but we will follow through on that. And see, I appreciate the question.
And the one about learning about culturally appropriate gender behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
No, David, don't apologize.
No, it's good. This is why you raise your question, so we can answer and clarify. I believe that's where that is for the race question, but we'll double check on that. So it's important. So don't apologize at all.
Okay, so going once, going twice. Are there other questions too?
Very good.
All right, so if no other questions come up in this session, we'll post this, I'll post a recording of this session to the course.
Mm-hmm.
And if anything else comes up, please post to the discussion forum. And we also, the course team, which is comprised of Dr. Wise and your 3 TAs, they do their best to get back to people within, as soon as possible, within 24 hours, 48 maximum, and to get things graded and to get issues resolved. Just know that everyone is working as hard as they can to resolve technical issues. These things sometimes can happen, especially given the fact that we're all online. So your patience is very much appreciated. And David and everybody, David says thank you. And
thank you.
So does Mary, and so does MM. I don't know who MM is, but and Alma. Everyone who's joining, thank you so much, and we appreciate your participation in the course.
Yeah. Thanks so much, and I will see you online, and enjoy Module 3. All right, bye.